Well, hello everyone, and thanks, Rich, for that very generous introduction. I don't know if I deserve it. On the other hand, as you can see, I've lost most of my hair, and I don't think I deserve that either. So in the long run, maybe all these things work out. I really am honored to be the kickoff speaker for this great series. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I urge you to come back. If you don't like what I say, come back next time anyway. And if you do like what I say, come back. As Rich says, he and I go back quite a way. And I was just reminding him that we were reminding each other. The first time we met was in a cafe in Boston with Barry Bluestone, where Rich was the head of the mine workers. And we spent about 3 hours talking political ideas, and we haven't stopped really ever since. As a matter of fact, last summer when I was still in the middle of writing this book, I was telling Rich about it. And I was talking about the two-tier wage system. And he said to me, 2 tiers? Why do you think they're going to stop at 2 tiers? Good point, and it's in the book. My book, The Service Economy, is about the future. Now, it's not about the future of robots 100 years from now, and it's not about what's going to happen to the stock market tomorrow. The future, in the sense of this book, is somewhere between 10, 12, 15 years from now. Now, before I start, I just want to make a little survey. How many people in this room think that the next generation is going to be financially worse off than the current generation? Okay, put your hands down. How many people in this room think that they personally are going to be okay for over the next 10 or 15 years?
I just want to leave that one.
Well, for whatever reason. Okay, all right. Okay, this is, yeah, assuming. Okay, well, actually, as I will explain a little bit later, this is a very American audience. So I'm going to talk about this in 3 stages. 1, where the economy is headed, in my view. 2, what are the chances that that direction will be changed by our current political setup, and what that means for activists and people who care about a better future for our country. There's more in the book, of course. There's chapters on history, chapters on America's class system, chapter on why the future disappeared from American politics. And then, of course, as you would all expect in an economics book, there's sex, romance, and adventure. But you're going to have to buy the book to get that. Now, I start with this proposition. The United States, for a variety of reasons, no longer has the means to fulfill the 3 great dreams that have driven American politics over the last decades. 1, the dream of business and Wall Street for deregulation and infinite profits. 2, the dream of our military and foreign policy elite for global domination. And 3, the dream of the ordinary American for a rising living standards. Now, 1 out of 3, certainly. 2 out of 3, maybe. 3 out of 3, no way. Now, you know, you turn on the TV at night and you read the newspapers in the morning, and the pundits and politicians are talking about this grand bargain that must be made between liberals and conservatives, Republicans and Democrats, about taxes, about the budget, and it's all couched in the future of America. Well, my first point here is that the bargain's already made. The deal has already been struck. And that is, of the 3 great dreams, the one that's going to go is the living standards of the American working middle class. Now, this is not, as Rich said, just about the current recession. For those of you who have been reading The State of Working America from EPI, you know that at the end of World War II, wages and benefits in the United States, real wages kept going up year after year after year after year. They peaked about 1979, and since then, they've been flat. Now, this doesn't mean that no one ever got a raise between 1979 and the crash of 2008. What it means is that take a typical worker, take a 30-year-old male worker with 2 years of college in 2008, that worker was making no more in real terms than his equivalent back in 1979. But, well, and by now, we know why. Globalization, which, and a series of trade agreements which favored U.S. investors overseas over American workers. The decline in the bargaining position of American workers, union and non-union, and more recently, the cuts in and shredding of the social safety net. We know why this has happened. There's been books, including mine, and thousands of others who've explained this. But there's a question that normal people have to this proposition. And that is, if wages were flat and the economy was stalled for the middle class, why did it look so good? Why in the 80s and the 90s, yeah, there were ups and downs, but people, flocked to the malls, bought cars, bought houses, etc. Well, there are 2 main reasons for that. One is family income, as opposed to hourly wages, kept up because families sent more people to work, typically the wife. Well, that strategy is now exhausted. There's more women in the labor force than there are men. And the second reason was, I'm sure you all remember, was the debt boom, the credit boom. So your wages were flat. You weren't quite doing as much in terms of earnings as your parents might have been, but you had access to easy credit. Well, after the crash of 2008, 2009, that bubble has burst. It will be, at the most optimistic, a generation before the public, the investors, and everybody else forgets about what happened a few years ago and creates another kind of credit balloon that would lift the economy. A generation, if ever. I argue in the book that I don't think it's really ever coming back. So, you had flat wages, but you had props under family income. Knock the props away, and you can expect we're looking at a future of lower and lower wages and benefits. Even with a recovery, I want to stress that point. This is not just about the recession. Even with the recovery, even with a recovery of jobs, we will create more jobs in America. We're already creating them right now. But they're paying 10 to 12 bucks an hour, not 20, 25, or 30. Make the optimistic assumptions about the next 10 years. No new recession. Europe doesn't go down the tube. No big banks fail. We continue to grow. Make that assumption, and you still are looking down the barrel of lower and lower wages. Not flat wages like we had for the last 30 years, but now I'm talking about a decline. Now, nobody knows the future, right? But if your boat is headed towards the rocks, and there's going to be no change in direction, it is a reasonable conclusion that we're heading for disaster. That is part of what I'm telling you. Still, it's not inevitable. We know what we need to change this direction. People have been writing and talking about a high-wage strategy for America for at least 20 years. We have a whole literature that explains how America can reverse this downturn. And you know it. It's invest in infrastructure, education, and research. It's trade policies that encourage people to make things here in the United States. It's labor law reform. it's regulation of Wall Street, it's taxes that redistribute, yes, redistribute